I am my mother's lawyer." The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder on a clear day. Judge Harrison, accustomed to the formal rhythm of family law hearings, paused mid-leaf through a stack of documents, looking over the rims of his glasses in astonishment. David Thompson was only 9 years old, yet his voice carried a sharp, precise authority that cut through the hush of the room. He stood next to his mother, Janet, who oscillated between pride and sheer terror. Across the room, Robert Wellington III, a Chicago real estate mogul, nearly choked on a coffee he had just sipped. "I'm sorry, young man, but this is a legal hearing between adults," Judge Harrison said. Try to maintain patience as he studied the thin boy in glasses who had audaciously interrupted a $1 million custody case. "I know, Your Honor," David replied, his tone calm yet resolute. "I also know that according to Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child, ratified by the United States, I have the right to express my opinion on matters that directly affect me." He adjusted his glasses, flipping open a scribbled notebook. This case definitely affected him. The courtroom fell silent, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Robert Wellington, wearing a tailored suit worth more than Janet earned in 6 months, exchanged uneasy glances with his lawyers. No one had prepared to confront a child quoting international law. Janet Thompson had been raising David alone, working 60 hours a week as a nursing assistant. For 8 years, Robert had appeared in David's life a mere 4 times, always with expensive gifts and empty promises. Now, suddenly, he sought full custody. "Your Honor," Dr. Mitchell, Robert's lead attorney, interjected, adjusting his tie. "This is highly irregular. The child has no legal capacity to disturb him," David finished, looking directly at the attorney with a calmness that caused a few adults to shift in their seats. "And if you really cared about my well-being, you would want to hear what I have to say rather than trying to silence me." Robert leaned toward Dr. Mitchell to whisper something urgent, but David continued, methodically opening his notebook. "Your Honor, I have prepared a documented presentation on why I should remain with my mother, including evidence of the petitioner's true motives." He paused, locking eyes with Robert for the first time. "Motives that I believe the court will find very enlightening." Robert's face paled. How had this boy, barely 9 years old, prepared more thoroughly for a courtroom battle than millionaire lawyers? David's calm authority left everyone in the room witnessing something extraordinary. A child armed not with weapons or wealth, but with intellect, research, and courage, capable of challenging the very foundations of an adult's deceit. Dr. Mitchell regained composure. "Your Honor, while we admire the child's creativity, this court deals with complex family law issues requiring adequate legal representation." "Then why didn't you provide one for him?" David shot back, snapping the notebook shut. "In the last 8 months of this case, no one thought it important to hear the opinion of the person most affected by this decision." Robert shifted uneasily. There was something unnerving about this child's calm demeanor. His refusal to be intimidated by wealth, authority, or the presence of his biological father. Janet whispered, "Maybe we should let the lawyers—" "What lawyers, Mom?" David interrupted gently. "We can't afford Dr. Mitchell or his colleagues. So either I speak for us or no one speaks." Robert finally spoke. "David, son, I know this is confusing, but don't call me son." His words were cold, sending shivers through the room. David's voice was steady, almost surgical. "In the last 9 years of my life, you've shown up exactly 4 times. 2 on birthdays, always 3 weeks late. 1 at Christmas, 20 minutes between social engagements, and 1 during a press event for philanthropy. And yet now, suddenly you seek full custody." The courtroom fell silent. Robert opened his mouth to protest, but David continued, adjusting his glasses. "The last time we saw each other, 6 months ago, you spent 15 minutes in our apartment. Just long enough to criticize our furniture, complain about the smell of the medicine my mother brings home, and suggest I might have potential if I received a proper education." "Interestingly," David said, flipping pages of his notebook, 2 weeks later, you filed for custody." Dr. Mitchell whispered something to Robert, but the boy was relentless. "I did some research on my biological father. I discovered that he recently lost an expensive lawsuit against his business partners. I discovered his third wife has filed for a contested divorce. And I discovered something very interesting about a trust fund established by my late paternal grandmother. Robert's face drained of color. How had this boy uncovered information even his own lawyers hadn't fully grasped? David turned a page, smiling. Not the innocent smile of a child, but the calculating smile of someone who knew they held winning cards. Before we discuss inheritances and financial motives, let's talk about why a man who never showed genuine interest in being a father suddenly developed such a strong paternal instinct. Sweat glistened on Robert's forehead. His expensive legal team looked lost. None were prepared for a child who knew more about the case than they did. Judge Harrison leaned forward, intrigued. In 30 years, he had never witnessed such poise from a child in his courtroom. David, you mentioned evidence. What kind of evidence can a 9-year-old gather? The judge asked. David adjusted his glasses again. For the past 3 months, since learning about this lawsuit, I have devoted every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon to research at the Central Public Library. Researching what? Dr. Mitchell asked, his tone dripping with disbelief. Public records, newspaper archives, corporate documents, and previous court cases involving Mr. Wellington. David explained. The head librarian, Ms. Rodriguez, taught me to access basic legal databases. She saw that this wasn't curiosity, it was a necessity. She helped me learn how to gather evidence effectively. Janet's eyes filled with tears. She had thought David was pursuing a school project. She never imagined he had been preparing to protect their family. David continued, meticulously presenting the details. In the last 18 months, Mr. Wellington faced 3 major lawsuits, lost a $2.3 million dispute with former partners, and his current wife filed for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. I also discovered a trust fund set up by my grandmother for me, $1.7 million, accessible only if my father obtained custody or when I turned 18. She intended it as protection, not an incentive for greed. Robert's face turned crimson. He had underestimated this boy entirely. David closed the notebook dramatically. My grandmother didn't anticipate that her son would become a manipulator who ruined small family businesses. Yet here we are. I can prove all of this. He pulled out a manila folder with organized documents, lawsuits where Wellington Industries had preyed on financially vulnerable families. He presented photos, public filings, and newspaper clippings, showing Robert's repeated pattern of predatory behavior. This family, David said, pointing to one case, owned a small bakery. Mr. Wellington used insider information from a local bank to acquire their property at a fraction of its value. This demonstrates a pattern of behavior. A man who preys on the vulnerable, now trying to prey on his own child. Judge Harrison flipped through the documents, growing more serious by the second. Where did you obtain this information? Public court records, newspaper archives, corporate filings. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me that the truth is almost always publicly available. We just need to know where to look, David replied calmly. Dr. Mitchell attempted one last argument. Even if these allegations are true, it doesn't change the fact that my client can provide better educational opportunities for the child. David opened a final section of his notebook with precision. About education, Your Honor, during one of his 4 visits over 9 years, I overheard a phone conversation. Mr. Wellington was planning to send me to Riverside Military Academy in Colorado, a strict boarding school where children have died due to abuse and neglect. He intended to isolate me and gain access to my inheritance under the guise of educational expenses. Robert's composure shattered. Dr. Mitchell stood in disbelief. David pulled a small digital recorder from his backpack. Ms. Rodriguez taught me that documenting evidence is fundamental. I recorded the conversation, which occurred 6 months ago while he visited our apartment. Thinking I was doing homework, Judge Harrison examined the device. David pressed play. The unmistakable voice of Robert Wellington outlined the plan. He'll stay at Riverside until 18. $500 per month for boarding. The rest of the money? Mine. She'll never know. Perfect. Janet covered her face. Sobbing, Dr. Mitchell was pale. His client's words had destroyed his case. David paused. There's more. My grandmother left a letter instructing me to use the trust to protect myself if my father ever tried to manipulate custody for money. Robert Wellington slumped in defeat. He had been completely outmaneuvered by a 9-year-old boy. Judge Harrison banged his gavel. Based on the evidence, custody is denied. A full investigation into potential fraudulent use of trust funds is ordered. David calmly closed his materials. I did this not out of anger, but because every child deserves a family that truly loves them, not one that sees them as a financial opportunity. The courtroom was silent. A 9-year-old had transformed a custody hearing into a lesson in intelligence, courage, and love. 3 years passed since that historic day in the courtroom. David Thompson, once the quiet, meticulous 9-year-old, had transformed into a symbol of courage, intelligence, and unwavering justice. His victory in the custody case not only saved his family, but became a national story that changed the way children's voices were considered in legal proceedings. The recording that exposed Robert Wellington went viral. Social media lit up with the story of the boy who had outsmarted millionaire lawyers using only a public library, determination, and an unflinching sense of justice. Within weeks, news outlets across the country covered David's extraordinary achievement. Videos racked up millions of views, inspiring parents, lawyers, and children alike. Legislators in 17 states began pushing amendments to family law, recognizing children's rights to meaningful participation in custody disputes. At 12 years old, David Thompson found himself in the national spotlight once again. He had been invited to host America's most-watched morning television show. Sitting in the studio, taller now and with sharper glasses, he greeted the audience with calm confidence. "I'd rather just be called David," he said, smiling softly. "I learned that every child has a voice, even when adults pretend not to listen." The audience erupted in applause. Backstage, Janet Thompson watched, her uniform of nursing supervisor glinting in the studio lights. The pride she felt that day in court had grown into a quiet, steady awe at the impact her son was creating. The hospital where she worked had established the Janet Thompson Program, a scholarship fund for children of low-income employees inspired by David's story. The host turned to Janet. "Janet, how does it feel to see your son inspire millions of families?" Janet's voice was steady but emotional. "David has always been special, but what makes me most proud isn't just his intelligence, it's his heart. He could have used this story to brag, but he chose to help others instead." David smiled, adjusting his trademark glasses. "After seeing how the library helped me, I wondered how many other kids were going through similar situations without knowing where to turn. So we started the Cool Libraries Project." He described how, in 1,200 public libraries across the United States, special sections were created featuring children's rights books written in simple language. Computers were provided with free access to basic legal resources, giving countless children the tools to advocate for themselves. The camera panned to Janet, discreetly wiping tears away. Over 3 years, she had watched her son transform personal trauma into a movement that empowered thousands. Meanwhile, Robert Wellington's life had collapsed completely. Court-ordered investigations revealed the extent of his predatory financial schemes. Wellington Industries went bankrupt. His former partners filed lawsuits for fraud, and his reputation was destroyed. His mansion was sold, and he now lived in a modest apartment in the Chicago suburbs, working as a salesman at a small electronics store. He occasionally thought about the son he had tried to manipulate for money, realizing that David had become the kind of man he himself could never be. David, however, never spoke ill of his father publicly. When asked about him in interviews, he always replied with maturity and restraint. "I hope he finds peace and learns that true love cannot be bought or stolen," he said. "Holding a grudge doesn't help anyone, but setting boundaries is essential to protecting those we love." The story of David's courage reached other children as well. 6 months later, a letter arrived from Sophia Martinez, a 10-year-old girl from Los Angeles. She had used the Cool Libraries Project to help her immigrant grandmother avoid an unfair eviction. Her letter read, in part, "Thank you for teaching me that every child has a voice. I used mine and saved my family." Janet found David reading the letter in his room, surrounded by hundreds of similar letters from children nationwide. "How does it feel to know your courage has inspired so many?" Janet asked. David folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box for safekeeping. "Remember when you told me that sometimes the scariest things in life turn out to be the most important?" Janet nodded. "I think I understand now. David said softly. If Robert Wellington had never tried to tear us apart, I would never have discovered that a child can change a world when adults stop underestimating them. That same day, another call came that would change his life once more. Harvard University offered him a full scholarship to a special law and social justice program, created specifically for students who demonstrated exceptional social leadership before the age of 16. Will you accept? Janet asked after he hung up. I accept, David said, but on one condition. I want to use my education to create a legal system that protects all children, not just those lucky enough to protect themselves. Years later, David Thompson became the youngest lawyer ever admitted to the bar at 16. His first case was a landmark lawsuit against the public educational system for failing to teach children their basic legal rights. David won, establishing a precedent that made basic legal education mandatory for all American students. Meanwhile, Robert Wellington never recovered. He worked jobs that barely paid his bills, haunted by the extraordinary son he had lost to greed and short-sightedness. For the rare moment of honesty, he recognized that David had become exactly the kind of man he had never been able to be. David's story proved that true strength does not come from money, power, or connections, but from intelligence, courage, and unconditional love. A 9-year-old had defeated a corrupt system using nothing more than public records, relentless determination, and the transformative power of truth. He learned that fighting for what is right can bend even the universe in your favor. And Robert learned that underestimating a determined child can be the costliest mistake of a lifetime. David's greatest victory, however, was not destroying Robert Wellington. It was building a legacy that saved thousands of families from similar injustices. He turned personal trauma into a movement that reshaped public perception of children's rights and inspired a generation to speak up for themselves. As he looked toward the future, David reflected on what he had learned. First, he told the camera in a later interview, you are not alone. Second, you have more power than you know. And third, the truth always finds a way to win, even when it seems impossible. Don't let anyone convince you that you're too small to make a difference. I was 9 years old when I changed my life, and my mother's life forever. You can change yours, too. And with that, David Thompson, once the 9-year-old who shocked the nation with his courage, continued to inspire millions, proving that intelligence, preparation, and love are more powerful than wealth or privilege. The boy who became a symbol of children's voices had transformed the world, one library, one classroom, and one courageous act at a time.